Dad transferred his business to my brother at his retirement party, calling me a disappointment. 2 years ago, my dad retired from his role as CEO of the lab equipment business he had built from the ground up. For almost 7 years, he had promised me, I'm 30 now, that I would be the next CEO. So you can imagine my shock when, at his retirement party, he announced that my brother-in-law would become the next CEO. I was blindsided. I had organized the party and didn't have a clue this was coming. I clapped along with everyone else, but later confronted him about it. He said he had his reasons for choosing Zach, my brother-in-law, over me. Apparently, Zach, 34, was more of a son to him than I was, and he thought I was a disappointment. Just to give you some context, Zach had only been involved in the business for about a year at that point, while I had dedicated 7 years of my life to it. We've known Zach for a while since he's been with my sister, 33, for almost 5 years, and they've been married for 2. When Zach joined the company, I worked closely with him and he seemed like a decent guy. But the idea that my dad considered him more of a son than his actual son was hard to swallow. When I asked my dad how I had disappointed him, he gave me the most ridiculous explanation. That was when I lost all respect for him. He told me that it was a tough decision, but he had to do what was best for the company. He believed that someone mentally weak like me would never make a good leader, and that's why he chose Zach, who apparently had more traits like my dad than I did. By calling me mentally weak, he was referring to my generalized anxiety disorder, which I had told my family about a few months before his retirement. During dinner one night, I accidentally dropped a small container of anti-anxiety pills, which led to a conversation about my condition. My mom was understanding, but my dad wasn't. He's not a big believer in mental health and thinks that toughness is the answer to everything. After I revealed my anxiety, he started doubting my ability to lead. I should mention that my anxiety never affected my work, and I always managed to keep it under control. I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people in top management dealing with similar issues, but they handle it just fine. My dad, however, saw my use of medication as a sign of weakness, and said I was making excuses. So after some deliberation, he decided Zach would be the perfect candidate to succeed him. He told me I was free to leave if I wanted, but he couldn't trust me to lead the company. It wasn't just what he said that hurt. It was the fact that he had let me believe I would be the next CEO, even though he had already made up his mind. That night, I left the party early and never spoke to my dad again. It was his company, and he could choose whoever he thought was best. But I didn't have to stick around and take that kind of disrespect. So I resigned and found a new job within a couple of weeks. The only family member I've stayed in touch with is my mom. When my sister found out I was resigning because I was upset about Zach becoming CEO, she took it as a personal attack and we had a big fight. We haven't spoken in the past 2 years, and I haven't had any contact with Zach either. Occasionally I talk to my mom and we try to meet up at least once a month. Every time we meet, she urges me to make amends with my dad, but I'm just not interested. About a week ago, my mom called, sounding frantic. She told me that Zach had been caught up in some fraudulent activities, tax fraud to be specific, and had been arrested. Now, even my dad was under investigation because of his previous association with the company. My mom wanted me to speak to my dad, mend things with him, and possibly testify for him in court since I had worked there before. But I made it very clear to her that I wouldn't get involved in any way. I figured that if my dad was under investigation, other higher-ups in the company would be too. If Zach committed fraud, it's a serious charge and I don't want any part of it. The farther I stay from this mess, the better. So, I was super clear with my mom. No way was I going to stick my neck out for my dad. They've got to handle this mess themselves. I don't want any drama. Plus, if my dad really wanted my help, he should have just talked to me directly. He's the one who needs me, so why should I make the first move? My mom then accused me of being childish and told me to quit being petty. She said I needed to talk to my dad and sort things out because the family's going through a tough time and we need to stick together. I thought she was being totally unreasonable and told her my decision was final. No way was I reaching out to Dad. That's when she got really mad and called me selfish and heartless, saying I was just hung up on what happened 2 years ago. Honestly, her words stung. If she were in my shoes, she'd feel just as betrayed and wouldn't move on so easily. She wouldn't have forgiven Dad either if she had worked for a position for 7 long years only to be passed over because of something beyond her control. It's crazy to expect me to forgive him, especially when he's never even tried to apologize. How can anyone forgive someone who isn't even sorry? The argument went on for a while until I eventually snapped and told her it's probably karma for what they did to me. Whatever Dad and Zach are dealing with now, they deserve it. She went silent, and then hung up. I felt kind of bad about what I said, so I decided to call her back a few hours later. To my surprise, she had blocked me. Now I feel super guilty about it. Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been a week since my mom blocked me and I haven't been able to reach her. I'm trying not to feel too bad about it, but honestly, it sucks. She was my only family contact for the last 2 years, and now that she's not talking to me, I feel really lost and alone. Sure, I have my friends, but she was the only family member looking out for me. Now, coming to terms with this is really hard. I still think I didn't do anything wrong. I really believe this could be karma for Dad kicking me out of the company over something I couldn't control. Yes, I have an anxiety disorder, but it's not crippling. It doesn't affect my leadership or work abilities. It certainly didn't make me a disappointment like Dad said. Words carry weight, and what he said to me on his retirement night has haunted me for 2 years. His backward attitude toward mental health really messed up my self-esteem for months. I doubted myself constantly and felt like an imposter at my new job. It took a long time to get over that, and I'm still in therapy for unresolved issues. But it has never impacted my work. My bosses even consider me one of the best employees and are planning to promote me soon. So yeah, I think Dad messed up big time. If Mom can't see that, it's not my fault. It just sucks she's taking Dad's side instead of telling him to apologize. I can't understand why she thinks I should make the first move. But I'm firm on this. I'm not doing anything for the family until they sincerely apologize. Update 2. My sister dropped by today in a total panic. She wanted help because her husband is in serious trouble, but honestly, I don't know what they expect me to do. It's a federal crime and my hands are tied. I invited her in because she was a wreck and I tried to be as kind as I could. I'm not heartless after all. She cried on my shoulder, saying she had no idea about any of this and would have stopped it if she had known. She's really worried and wants me to use my connections to bail him out. I had to tell her that I don't have any connections that would help here. Then she said Dad mentioned one of my bosses is married to a federal judge, implying I should ask my boss for help. She even suggested they'd pay whatever it takes. So my sister wanted me to get in touch with my boss and, by extension, his wife. I thought that was way out of line, even for her. I mean, seriously? I said no right away and let her know I wasn't cool with it. I told her I thought she came by for emotional support, but this was not something I could back or even think about encouraging. My main reason was that I didn't want my bosses associating me with a family involved in fraud. On top of that, I have my own morals and ethics. I don't wish anything bad for my sister, but if Zach did commit tax fraud, I wasn't about to help him out and twist things in his favor. It wasn't personal against him, I just didn't want to get involved. The best I could do was offer emotional support, but expecting me to go further was nuts. When I said no and asked her to leave, my sister started sulking. She couldn't believe I was still holding a grudge against her husband, which wasn't true. I tried to explain that it wasn't about him. I never blamed him for what happened with my father. My dad chose to give him the position instead of me, and if I were in Zach's shoes, I probably would have taken the job too, without worrying about who deserved it. So, yeah, maybe I resented him a bit, but I didn't hold a grudge. He just wasn't important enough for that. I tried to tell my sister, but she wouldn't listen. She said our mom was right. It was pointless to talk to me because I was petty and selfish. That hurt, especially since I had tried to comfort her, and she never did the same for me when I was struggling. We ended up fighting again, and I told her to leave my house. She couldn't just waltz in and insult me like that. We were shouting so loudly that I couldn't even understand what she was saying. We cursed at each other, and she finally left. I feel awful about everything, but at the same time, I think they deserve what's happening. I regret keeping in touch with my mom for the past 2 years, and wish I'd cut my family off when I had the chance. Even now, I regret trying to support my sister. They're not worth my time or energy, but I can't seem to cut them out entirely. I keep thinking about our childhood and how close we used to be. It sucks, and I just want it to be over. Update 3. So, it's been 4 days since that fight with my sister, and no one spoke to me in that time. I thought they might finally leave me alone, but today my parents showed up. I'd already decided I wasn't letting them in. I made that mistake with my sister, and look how that turned out. They were outside the door, and I told them to leave. I didn't think we had anything new to say to each other, but my dad said he wasn't there for help. He wanted to apologize. He realized he messed up big time and knew nothing he said could fix it, but he wanted to try. That really shocked me because I expected him to start yelling. He was genuinely sorry, and we hadn't spoken since his retirement party when he called me a disappointment. I couldn't forget that while he was apologizing. When he finished, I thanked him for coming all the way to apologize, but I told him it wasn't easy for me to forgive him. He can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay. You know, it's fine just like that, especially when we haven't even talked to each other in the last 2 years and he never even tried to reach out. I needed my own time too, so I told him I needed space. Even then, I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him. It wasn't just the fact that he screwed me over 2 years ago that bugged me, but more about how it took him 2 whole years and a ton of trouble to realize he'd messed up and finally come to talk to me. That really made me sad. Even after all that, I was bracing myself for him to blow up and start yelling. But instead, he calmly said he was willing to wait for me to come around. He'd be fine with whatever I decided, even if I never spoke to him again or didn't forgive him. He admitted he made a really stupid decision back then. It wasn't about not taking my mental health seriously. He actually took it too seriously. He told me about how all the men in his family had always been tough guys, and he was raised the same way. They believed you had to fight through life, and anyone who said they had anxiety or depression was just weak and making excuses. So when he discovered I was taking anti-anxiety meds, he thought maybe I couldn't handle leading the company. He built that business from scratch and didn't want to see it fail. His fear and paranoia led him to make the worst decision ever, which landed us in this mess. After we stopped talking, he told me he was furious with me and resented me for a few months. But then he started second-guessing himself and read more about anxiety. A couple of months ago, he started feeling like he might have some symptoms himself. He wanted to reach out then and make things right, but this whole fiasco with Zach got in the way. After spilling all this and apologizing, I felt really weird about the situation. I still don't know how to feel about any of it, but at least he apologized. 2 years might not seem like much, but it means a lot to me. I don't know if I can forgive him anytime soon, and if his apology was even genuine, but I'm willing to think about it. For now, I told him to go home, and I'd contact him if I felt like it. He respected that and left. As for my mom, we didn't get much time to talk today. She did apologize for her behavior along with my father's. Towards the end of my convo with my dad, she said she was willing to wait for me to forgive her. She admitted she reacted too quickly and harshly, instead of trying to understand what I was going through. She also mentioned talking to my sister, who wanted to apologize too, but I don't consider that a real apology. My sister is an adult and can speak for herself if she wants to. If she wants to apologize, she'll have to do it in person. I get that she's dealing with Zach's stuff right now, but it's still no excuse for how she treated me last time she visited. Anyway, the point is most of my family has apologized, and it's up to me to decide if I want to accept it or not. If I'm honest, it's a tough decision. I've spent 2 years with no contact with most of them, except my mom, and even with her, things are dicey. On one hand, I want to forgive and move on because holding grudges isn't helping me. If I don't forgive, these thoughts will just keep looping in my head like they have been. But on the other hand, I'm not sure if forgiving them and moving past it is the right thing to do. I'm really confused right now. I miss my family a lot, and all this is messing with my head. Some of you might think they're only apologizing because they're in trouble, but I've made it clear I can't help them. Even if I could, it's a matter of principles for me, and I won't change that for anyone. So if that's their expectation, they're setting themselves up for failure. If they're genuinely trying to apologize and fix our relationships, that just complicates things even more. I guess I'll sleep on it for a few days and then decide what to do. I'll keep you guys updated. Update 4. Hey everyone, it's been almost 4 months since I could log in here because I got super busy. I'll explain why that happened later. The last time I posted an update, my parents and sister had just apologized to me. My parents did it in person, but my sister... So, I guess my sister got really caught up in all the drama with Zach, which is why she had our mom apologize to me on her behalf. A few weeks after that, my sister came over and apologized to me in person. I basically told her the same thing I told my parents, that I needed time to think about everything before deciding what to do. I took my sweet time thinking it over. Last month, I finally told my family that I wanted to work on rebuilding our relationship, but it had to be at my own pace. I mentioned that I was up for having dinner with them once a month and seeing how things go from there. I'm still not entirely sure if rebuilding our relationship is the best idea, but they were super thrilled and totally okay with it as long as I was happy. So that's the plan for now. We had our first dinner together a couple of weeks ago. It was a bit awkward, but I could tell they were making a real effort to make up for the past by being extra nice to me. Zach wasn't there because my sister filed for divorce from him 2 months ago, and he had already been fired from the family company. Interestingly, my dad offered to make me the CEO, but I turned him down. I just need more time to think about it. For now, my dad is handling things at the company and waiting for my decision. I told him I'd think about it for a couple more months. Who knows, I might accept it eventually. Right now, I'm trying to focus on the things I love, like spending time with my girlfriend. She's actually an old friend of mine who I started dating a couple of months ago. That's kept me pretty busy because now my life isn't just about work and family drama. She's the one who convinced me to forgive my family and give them another chance. I'm really happy we're together because I had a crush on her for the longest time, but was too scared to ask her out. Worried I'd ruin our friendship if she didn't feel the same. But she made the first move, and now we're together, and I'm over the moon. So yeah, things are going pretty well for me right now.